Hello everybody and welcome to Staying Connected with Tony Tonkin and Avery Hilditch. Hope that you can be with us. So this is the first time we've really tried something on the YouTube channel, and we're trying to make it a little bit more popular and a little bit more interesting. Avery has suggested that if we don't get all that many people on board, we might have to shift over back to Facebook. But I'm hoping that we get a number of you. I can see on my screen how many viewers we've got. We have 3 at the moment, so I really appreciate that. And we just dropped one out, so our introduction mustn't have been all that good, Avery. So welcome aboard, Avery. Good to see you, mate.
Good to see you too, Tony. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I went down to the supermarket today to get a whole stack of toilet paper because we'd legitimately run out today. So
you're lucky you're not using T-shirts or something like that, then, aren't you?
No, I'm not. Yeah. I'm not. I'm not sorting undies or anything either, for that matter. I'm just going down and doing. It's really, I think, this toilet paper thing just amazes me, mate. I don't understand. I know that when we've generally run out, we've decided to go down and get some toilet paper, but had to go down really early.
Yeah.
And then when we got there, I had to show my age-old card or whatever, or demonstrate that I was over 65. I know that many people out there are just absolutely amazed to hear that news. But we did, as a result, I had to get in, get the paper, and by the time I left, which was before 8 o'clock, most of it had gone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The last time I was carded, I think I was about 19.
Last time you were what?
Carded, asked to prove my age.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right,
I was about
right.
19. Right. It's a daily occurrence if you get down to Woolworths, down on Wilkinson Road here. They've employed security people to sort of walk up and down the aisle, make sure that people aren't trying to overload their trolleys and restricting all sorts of stuff. I mean, I just do not understand why, you can't just go and why somebody can't just go and buy, a pack of 6 toilet rolls or whatever. Can't get paper towels, can't get tissues.
Yeah, it just the whole thing amazes me. I don't know what it is. I did read psychologically. Apparently, it is because it's the only thing which we do control, which still amazes me because it's not like we control going to the toilet. When we've got to go to the toilet, we go to the toilet.
Yeah.
It's not like. But I don't know. I don't know why people are doing it. They just can't wait as they would normally and get it at the normal time because it's causing a great deal of anxiety. I was anxious. Fancy being anxious to go down the street and go and get some toilet paper.
Yeah, that I think is a good sort of segue into what we want to talk about today. The reason I'm saying that is that I think the panic buying is because of lack of understanding of apart from the fact that if you get it, you might die, right? I think that the lack of understanding of how we should respond to a pandemic lays right at the feet of the federal and state government.
Yep. In what way? What do you mean by that?
Let's say, was it back in December, we knew that China was having this big epidemic of this brand new virus. And back in December, particularly when the first case was detected I think it was on a cruise liner I'm not sure whether it was Singapore or South Korea or Japan, but when that first case was detected outside of China, I think the federal government, our federal government, the one in the United States, the UK government, all of them, should have been saying, okay, it looks like there's a good strong chance this will spread. Another thing as well, when that broke out, back in 2004, SARS broke out in China, and it spread around the world.
Yep.
People who don't learn from history are bound to repeat its mistakes, and the governments don't seem to have learned from what happened in 2004, and they just sat on their hands and did nothing to basically to prepare the Australian citizens and residents and that for what might come up. My view is that as soon as that came up, and it's a brand new virus, never before seen, they should have been putting things up to say, if this arrives in this country, this is the sort of things you must do. This is the sort of things you shouldn't do. And one of the things is, they explain the sort of, it's not going to impact your bowels, so you don't need to go and rush out and buy toilet paper. Do you know what I mean? This is how it's likely to affect you, and we know that because we've been seeing what's been happening in China, even though China quite likely hasn't been completely honest about numbers and things like that.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a dispute about the fact that China hasn't been honest.
Yeah,
I think one of the issues that we do have to consider is that I basically believe that politicians in general did not want to confront the backlash that could possibly occur if things weren't going to be the way that they were, that the professionals were anticipating.
Yeah.
Were they aware? I mean, they were aware that a pandemic can cause, actually millions of deaths. And I think the politicians were fearful that this was going to happen. And I think that they were unprepared intellectually, psychologically, and emotionally for all of this. What do you think?
Well, I think that the politicians who are, I'm not talking about the Labour Party because they're not in government, the actual government itself, the coalition, they were more focused on the economy.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't concern themselves, I don't think, with the state of the health of the nation, the physical health of the nation, the people in it. They were more. I think
one of the issues was that they actually failed to plan for what was likely to happen because they believed at some level, or hoped at some level at least, that it would never happen.
Yeah, and that is just pie in the sky thinking. In 1918 there was a worldwide pandemic of Spanish flu, killed between 50 and 100 million people. Right? There was the AIDS, HIV/AIDS epidemic in the 80s and the 90s. They should have learned from a Spanish flu. They should have learned from the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s. They should have learned from the SARS and the MERS epidemics or pandemics, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if Australia has a pandemic response office. Somebody who makes the plans for what Australia should be doing in the event of a pandemic, or in the event of a local epidemic.
Well, a bit like what they did do in the US, but then Trump disbanded it. Over a year ago.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, even though around that time they were being warned, but nevertheless he thought it was a useless idea.
Well, he thought it was a useless idea because it was Obama that set it up, and he's been disbanding everything that Obama has done.
Yeah.
It was a great idea, and if we don't have them, we should.
Yeah, so it's a really good thought, isn't it? So the question really for all of us, I guess, is what preparations had we done or considered in relation to the pandemic, and if we did have such an organisation, why wasn't it effective in terms of preparing us for all of this?
Yeah.
So. But I think they're really good questions, though, Avery. So I don't know. I don't even got a response. I don't know whether there's any information or whether there's somebody out there that can access our feed that could put something in the comments section in relation to Australia's response to this, and whether or not there was a warning.
There is I've just found a page, a document, the Australian Health Management Plan for Pandemic Influenza, published in August 2019.
All right.
But not enough for me to, haven't got enough time to look at it all, read through what it is.
This just goes to demonstrate how well organised we are Avery, because we should have done this research before.
Yeah.
Before we went.
Oh, you
before
mean
we
you?
decided to have this chat.
You and me, yeah. It just occurred to me just a moment ago. You know, do we have a pandemic response? This one is specific, if you know what I mean. It's talking about influenza. Coronavirus is not influenza, and they shouldn't be talking about a specific one, influenza. They should be talking about what happens, and what do we do.
Yeah, I just wonder. I wonder whether that needs to be checked out. That fact checking, Avery, because I'm wondering whether I think influenza is a coronavirus. I think you'll find it's the same group. I discovered the other day it's called corona means crown, so it's the way the corona's the way the virus is shaped. So a lot of the viruses are the same, and the 19 is the year. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did know that. Yeah.
God, I'm full of information, aren't I? So I had no idea actually until this morning when I was checking it out. But yeah, so I think that the difference between this one and all the others is that this one does attack the respiratory system specifically and is far more aggressive.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just looking that up right now.
Okay. Well, there you go. So, the beauty of us is that we can fact check this stuff at the same time because I would like to, but I've got so many screens open here, mate. I haven't got any space for anybody else.
Well, having seen, we've got photographs, not me personally, but there are photographs of the coronavirus, and it's like it looks like it's like a ball with a little spike sticking out of it, which is why they say why they call it corona, because it looks like a crown.
Apparently, it's the RNA. Which I always forget. I always remember that from biology when I was at school, but I can never remember what it stands for.
Ribonucleic acid. That's
the one. Thank you. But and that's kind of a unique strain within this virus.
Yeah.
That is the aggressive nature, I guess. But I don't know whether we should be talking about this stuff, as if we're friggin' medical practitioners.
or definitely not.
No, we shouldn't, should we? Because we may be imparting wrong information to everybody. Well, which may not be helpful.
The information I've just given, I've taken straight off a CDC web page.
All right.
And I can't see the word corona on there.
So I guess the other thing too, Avery, that we did want to, before we bore people silly around this stuff, I don't know, I can't tell how many people we have on board right at this moment, so I'm not even going to try.
We've got one.
Because this is not all that useful to us in that sense. Because, let's face it, it's just a Peter Bain. Okay, Peter, you got me. I see a bit of a... Thanks, Peter. Nice to know you're our only viewer, buddy. But you're making history because you are our only viewer. We might actually, at the end of this, we might just redo it again on Facebook where we had a few thousand the other day. So we'll see how we go. We'll have a chat about that at the end, I guess, Avery.
Yeah.
See who else might like to connect. But I guess the issue here is that, we were going to talk about what other, how we view federal government.
Yep.
How
we
think they're managing this.
Yeah.
And how the states are managing it. And I'm going to be
you need to move a bit forward, Tony. You need to move a bit closer to the mic.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Okay. That seems to be registering okay here, mate. But okay. So what do you think? How's the federal government going?
Personally, I think the federal government, as I said before, their response was slow.
Yeah.
There are things. Once they decided that they'd better do something, they did pick up speed. There's no argument about that. There's things that they've done which I agree with, and there's things that they have not done yet which they need to do. For example, this is particularly with this SA. Right, the federal government should be saying to all the state governments, because the nature of our federation, you should close all the schools and childcare centres.
Yeah, you had this conversation. You had this conversation the other day. I don't want to let people know that perhaps you're a bit obsessed with closing schools. I don't know whether
Well,
this comes from the fact that you hated school yourself or whatever it is, whether it has some deep psychological significance.
no, I love
But
school.
all right, okay, yeah,
Yeah. No, it's all to do with managing the spread, and they're still holding back, on doing that, on shutting the schools. I'm not saying that. I said they should close all the schools. I think what they should be doing is to say a certain number of schools will remain open for the children of essential workers. The AMBOs, the SES, the cops, the
yep,
nurses, etc.
yep.
And same with the childcare centres. Um, I think they've been very slow on some things and very good on others.
Do you think that they are responding at like right now? I think in Australia, we haven't reached our peak quite yet, but we appear to be close to it. The number of infections appear to be slowing,
Yeah,
and which is an indication, I guess, that we're getting to the top of the hill,
yeah,
and then hopefully it'll start to decline. One of
yes,
the things, though, that I was excited about, Avery, is that we here in South Australia, particularly where you and I know you're just out of the Playford area, aren't you? Yeah. Anyway, in the Playford area, I think the number of infections have been like 9, which is in and of itself amazing. But the areas which are infected the most, and it'd be interesting to see whether this is across not just this country but others or across other states, is that in places like Mitcham, which is an upper middle class area, the infections have been the highest. And the reason for this, I think, is that it's those people that are doing the travelling. So so here in our area, which is a lower class area, I guess, these people in and around where we live here don't travel, which I find kind of fascinating in a way, because everybody in this area though is really cautious about social distancing. They're doing all the right things.
yeah,
Very few people in the shopping centre today, apart from old people when I was there at 7 o'clock. But generally, I think people are doing a fabulous job.
yeah,
And no matter where you go, I do wonder whether people that live in the low socioeconomic areas normally maybe spend a heck of a lot of time at home anyway. I don't know. They don't have much money to do many other things, so maybe they do. But they certainly are not generally travellers, though most
yeah,
of them, I guess, haven't been overseas or whatever. So as a result of that, our infection rate is minimal, which is
yeah,
fabulous.
yeah. I worked out this morning here in SA, the infection rate is something like 0.24%.
Influenza's 0.01 though.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's a lot higher than it is for influenza.
Yeah.
But when we've got 387 cases, 385 cases in South Australia as of 2 p.m. yesterday, and we've got a population of about 1.5 million.
Yeah.
That comes out to about 0.25%, 0.24%, which is pretty damn
Which I
good.
think, which is that. So that'd be far. That'd be far lower than the United States, for example.
Oh God,
Certainly
yeah.
has to be far lower than Italy and Spain.
Well,
My God.
I was just talking there about SA.
Yeah.
Nationally, we've got 5,133 cases as of 2 p.m. yesterday, with a population of over 24 million. That
Yeah.
comes out to about 0.02%. You look at a state like New York and New Jersey in the United States. They've got infection rates of 35 and 35 and 25% respectively.
My God. So
Yeah,
what's happened? I mean, it's a good case study, isn't it? And if Peter, if you want to contribute to this conversation, please say something, because you're our only viewer. So it's really basically the three of us on here at the moment,
yeah,
Avery.
yeah.
But what is the reason, I guess, for the US being as they are and now taking over the world in terms of this pandemic, and the rest of the country. I mean, places like Australia. Like, I reckon we should be actually proud of ourselves because to some extent we've kind of got our act together. Maybe.
Yeah, we've.
Do you think?
Yeah, we've definitely done a much better job than somewhere like the United States, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a huge Scott Morrison fan.
Oh, that's not true. No, I find that really hard to believe.
No, I'm not a huge Scott Morrison fan.
You've
but
been voting Liberal for years. I understand that.
yeah, I know, but I did change a few years ago. Yeah, not a huge fan of Scott Morrison's, but he has done a much better job than the President of the United States has. I hate calling him that because I don't think he's fit for the office, but that's a different issue.
Yep, just call him Trump.
Trump. I usually refer to him as the marmalade marmoset.
Well, yeah, that's probably a reasonable way of describing him as well.
But it's unkind to marmosets.
So we've declared we're not going to get into a Donald Trump bashing process.
No, we're not. We're not.
But it's good fun to do it, though.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
Definitely.
And I tend to agree. I think Morrison's done a reasonable job.
Yeah.
And I hear people like Greg Hunt and others talk about this issue, and to me, they always seem relatively well informed. You know.
Yeah.
And they're not giving us crap. They're telling us as it actually is. They're not exaggerating or whatever. So I think that what they're doing is a reasonable job. I don't, the interesting thing for me though is that I wonder when all of this is over though, how we are going to look back on the way our politicians behaved, all the money they chose to give us, and whether or not they're going to take all that money back at the end of the day or cease. And how they're going to deal with the deficits that all this is creating as well, Avery. I don't know.
Well, I would think that the way they'll deal with the deficits is going to be austerity, because who's
going to suffer because of that? It'll be poor people.
Yeah,
it'll be people on welfare and benefits, and people on low incomes, and
it will.
People wanting childcare for their kids so they can go to work. And
as long as we've got a Conservative government, we can expect. And I'm just going by history, by what I've seen when I lived in the UK.
Yep.
More so than what I've seen here, but it's that if you've got a massive deficit, the Conservative response is austerity.
Yeah.
And as you say, the people it affects aren't the top end of town. It's the guys that the people that live in places like Elizabeth or Taparoo or wherever it happens to be, the lower socio-economic end of town.
Yep,
one of the things about that did impress me with the federal government's response was that I know we're not going to have a Trump bashing session. I'm not doing that.
No, we're not going to do that.
No, is that unlike Trump, right from the get-go, our government turned to the scientists and said, "What do we do? How do we handle this?"
Yeah.
And when the scientists said social distancing, our government said social distance. They didn't go as far as I said. They haven't gone as far as I'd like them to have done. I'm not going to talk about schools again. But they listened to the scientists, which is good, is what they should be doing.
Yeah, and I just wonder. I still want to focus on that. The conversations we're going to have when all of this is over are going to be about how the government responded, whether they responded effectively, whether they shut us down early enough, whether they were honest with us about actually what was happening. I think they're going to be things that are going to be really important to evaluate.
Well, absolutely. What they... I'm going to just go back a bit. What they should have done years ago is that we need to have something that will say we've got things like the SES to deal with emergencies, but do we have a federal office that says if there's a pandemic, if there's a local epidemic, when I say local, I don't mean in the Sydney area. I mean that's all over. It spreads across Australia. How are we going to deal with it? Well, if we haven't got one, and it doesn't appear, although I found that document about influenza. Influenza is a well-known virus. We know it mutates all the time, and it's a rapidly mutating thing. Coronavirus is brand new. The office, I think,
this version of coronavirus is brand new.
Yeah, this COVID-19 is brand new.
Yeah.
What if we haven't got such an office? We need to have an office where they say, if a new virus comes along, what do we need to do to prepare for it?
But
right?
You see, the point
instead
is,
of at the,
I don't disagree.
I was just saying, instead of what's happened here is that, or what appears to have happened here is it came along and there was a bit of dilly-dallying. Then they thought, oh, this could be serious. We better start doing something.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'm pretty damn certain this government didn't do, whether federal or state, right, is plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was what I was saying before. I actually don't think that they necessarily knew what they had a sense as to what the worst could be. But the worst could be if we have a pandemic, we need 25,000 ventilators.
Yeah.
Right? Or we need 2.5 or 3 million masks, or 1,000 a million PPE equipment. I mean, so whatever the pandemic may have indicated at its worst, prior to it arriving, we should have invested in putting all that stuff aside. I mean, I know it hasn't become a problem here in Australia, but in the US, it's become a massive problem because they knew it was coming and they didn't do that. And then the other thing was, I heard the other day that that the people who service the ventilators, that contract was abandoned by Trump.
Yeah.
So the people that were going to fix the problem couldn't fix the problem because their contract was, I don't know, discharged, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I think when we're evaluating all of this, we need to look at and make all those sorts of assessments.
Yeah. Once it's coronavirus is with us to stay. It's never going to go away. Yep. But once the crisis has passed and everything gets back to normal, one of the things that state and federal government should be doing is working together to coordinate to prepare a plan for how they would deal with such an incident in the future, whether it's this coronavirus or a new coronavirus or some other type of virus that crops up, or an epidemic rather than a pandemic. And they should plan ahead. Scientists can tell them things like, this is how viruses work. This is the sort of things that we need to do. These are the sort of preparations we need to make. They could say we've got a population of 24 million. Worst case scenario, going by COVID in the United States with 25 to 30 odd % of infections. In Australia, if we assumed that we'd get that sort of infection rate in Australia, then we need to have this many, this amount of PPE, this amount of ventilators, this amount of face masks, etc., and plan for it, and what do you call it? Stock, start produce the equipment, produce the stuff, and keep it. Have warehouse. I don't mean warehouses like the size of aircraft hangars, but have warehouses in each state and territory with a stockpile there. Yeah. Right. That in the event of it happening, right, they can say, okay, you need all that PPE and stuff. It's in there.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if we have warehouses stacked full of this stuff and it sits there for 10 or 20 years. The point is that you have it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it saves lives. Well, this is what it's really all about.
with a conservative government, one of the problems that we would have there is it would cost a fortune for them to buy it, and conservative governments don't like spending taxpayer money on things that are useful, like healthcare needs. They do spend a lot of money. There's no argument about that. And contrary to what a lot of people say, Medicare has been increased by the federal government, the coalition. But the cost of producing sufficient under worst case scenario plan would be absolutely tremendous. And I think a conservative government would be very hesitant to spend that, because not only have you got to spend it, you've got to store it in the right conditions, and you've got to have routine maintenance to make sure they're still working, because there's no point in having 10 million ventilators or something like that. You find you need them and half of them aren't working.
Yeah, no, precisely, mate. So what I was going to suggest, Avery, and thanks Peter for joining us.
And staying with us.
That we've only had the one. I'm going to suggest we switch this conversation over to Facebook, though.
Yep.
You okay to do that?
Yep.
So, Peter, if you want to continue, it'll probably be some of the same conversation, because there'll be a stack of people that haven't heard it before. We still want people to use our YouTube page. It's really important to us, so that as time goes by, clearly more people will log in, more people will think the crap we're talking about has got value, and they'll want to hear more of what we have to say, I hope. So join...
One thing before you do stop there, Peter, I hope you've subscribed and clicked the bell for notifications. If you haven't, please do so.
Because we will be doing more of them.
Yes.
We will be doing more of these YouTube feeds over time. And there's a page we've got called Things That Matter. That is also worth having a look at, and we'll be populating that with more and more stuff as time goes by. I've got a few videos up there at the moment. There's also simply our Facebook page and our web page, the Child Protection Party. So we just anybody watching this video to get involved with us as best as you can. Support us in whichever way you can, so that we can ensure that kids are cared for and that issues relating to kids are at the forefront of all political decisions. So thanks, Avery. I'll catch you on the other side.
Yeah.
And we'll go to Facebook and do our thing there for those people that want to look there as well. So thanks, Peter, and thanks for anybody else who logs on later.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.